Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us and for tuning in to Emerge's weekly interview series with women running for office. We're so excited to be joined by our own Emerge alum, New Mexico alum Linda Serrato, who is running for State House District 45. She is a first-generation college graduate with a bachelor's in public policy from Stanford. She spent her career fighting for New Mexicans and working families across the U.S., and she began her career organizing communities in eastern New Mexico for President Obama. And after that, she moved to DC to work on Capitol Hill for New Mexicans on natural resources issues. Linda returned to the West to support low-wage parents and returned to organizing for President Obama's second term. She soon was a founding member of an organization that organized ballot initiatives in multiple states to raise the minimum wage, and this work resulted in raises for more than 8 million low-wage workers. Incredible. So thank you so much for being a part of this, Linda, and we're so proud to have you as one of our Emerge alums. I'm happy that you agreed to join us today. If you could offer a few words to introduce yourself, that would be wonderful.
Well, thank you so much for that really kind introduction. Yeah, I'm running up here in Santa Fe, New Mexico for House District 45. Our capital is called the Roundhouse. So I just wanted to say that now when I keep referring to the Roundhouse over and over again. It's filled with art, it's filled with history, and it's a really beautiful place. And so it's my pleasure to be here today. I hope to represent my constituents in the Roundhouse soon. And really, I'm just a proud alum of Emerge. I wouldn't be in this position if I hadn't, attended Emerge in 2018 and graduated.
Wonderful. So we've heard that there have been some interesting new developments in your race recently. Can you give us an update on what's going on?
Yeah, so to give you a little background, I came out of a pretty tough primary. I was the only progressive running. Obviously, we were all facing, the restrictions put in place to protect our families from COVID-19. And so, we were very successful. We won by a 10-point margin over our opponents, and I was running against a former elected, the current county treasurer, and a former lobbyist. And the one good thing is that everyone, made sure that the race was about the issues that were in front of us. So I really appreciated that of all of our opponents. And so, but we won by about a 10-point margin by, having early reached out and really trying everything we could. We had a mix of modern technology, so digital ads and all those pieces, Zoom calls, doing a lot more Facebook Lives than I ever imagined I would do in my life. And then also, relying on some old school tactics like writing letters and making calls and those things too. And so it really helped us connect during this really tricky time. And in the general, I'm up against a libertarian in a fairly Democratic district. Democrats outnumbered Republicans 2-1. But we still believe in reaching out because, again, the social distancing changes how you're able to connect with your community. And so we want to make sure we're reaching people and hearing what their concerns are. But surprisingly, just this week, as you were mentioning, the current representative who sits in the seat surprisingly stepped down. He resigned from his seat after serving for over a decade, and just to spend time with his family and his health. And so now the county commission is looking to fill his seat for the next 3.5 months. So they'll be appointing someone until the winner of this election, moves forward in this seat and takes over. So I will be applying and asking the county commission for their consideration for this seat. And I'm, just like I promised in the primary to my voters and everyone, I'm going to work really hard to represent folks and earn their votes. And, to me, this is another part of that, making sure that we're earning this seat and we're doing everything we can.
That is great to hear. And it looks like you're on a great track to victory. So, and I love to hear about, women's stories and their narratives on how they decided that they were going to run for office. Can you tell about your thought processes there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm raising my daughter. She's 3 years old. My husband in New Mexico. And this all kind of came as a culmination of where 2018 was as a year. When my family in general, we've always put the next generation ahead of ourselves. My great grandparents raised their kids came to the United States. My parents built a stable home, allowing us to go to college. And now we have to give her the best. And it's a tricky time. My generation, we graduated amidst the worst economic recession since the Great Depression. And now, just as we're getting stable again, we are facing a pandemic and another recession. And so to me, that's not putting her in the best place to succeed. So she's always been a driving force of this. And I decided to seek out Emerge back in 2018. I was very disappointed by the 2016 election. I had my daughter in 2017, and really just connecting with all these women who were not only challenging themselves to do better, but challenging me, to look higher. What else can we do? How else can we come as a community? And so when this representative said that he wouldn't be running again, I decided to throw my hat in, and I'm really happy I did. I had people very early on that said, you're an underdog. You're not going to win. You don't have a chance against these bigger names than yours. And, we just fought tooth and nail for every single endorsement, every single vote, every single, moment, and every single dollar, everything you can do to win, we did. And so I was really proud of my team and where we are today.
That is amazing. And women have to work so hard to get everything that we have. And thank you so much for those hard fought victories that you've been having. What do you think are some of the biggest problems facing your community that motivated you to run? And what will your approach be in solving these issues?
Yeah. So, what was interesting was really early on, we decided, naturally, organically, we were the progressive in the race, as for a number of reasons. As you mentioned, I worked on ballot initiatives to raise the minimum wage in a number of states. And what I found across that effort was that people were very supportive of these progressive policies. And so we kind of came out of the bat saying we support paid sick, paid family leave. And before social distancing, back in January, before, we had any idea what was going to come next, we knocked a ton of doors. I knocked on over 1,500 doors. My team knocked on over 2,000. So I was really proud of our outreach, and we heard directly from people what their concerns were. And in this district, people assume that we are conservative Hispanics or Latinos. I just didn't find it at the door. I would run into Catholic, households who would say, I know the church is against this, but seeing my lesbian daughter raise her daughter, seeing my son struggle with addiction, these were real issues they were dealing with, and their approach was much more real world and what I call working class progressive ideas. And so, those conversations really shaped this. As we've seen with COVID-19 rising across the country, New Mexico has done a fantastic job of tampering down the spread and doing what we can. Santa Fe, we have the means, we have the capability of social isolating. Many of us can work at home. That's a lot of benefits. Not everyone, but many can. My district in particular has been hard hit by this. And it's not because we're throwing, COVID ragers. It's because we are the working class core of Santa Fe. And the people that live here are the ones that work in the plaza where our tourists come, and people from Texas or Arizona that surround us, come and visit and enjoy our incredible state. And so, they're the front lines, they're the essential workers, and, they're the families. And our families here in New Mexico are multi-generational. We have families that, the grandparents take an active role in raising their kids and, or their grandkids, I should say. And so it's, those are the issues that we're really seeing. So for me, I want to make sure we're protecting those multi-generational working class families and pushing for progressive values that help people first and foremost. So to me, that's things like paid sick leave. That's, the pandemic is incentivizing going to work sick, and we need to stop doing that. It doesn't help. We need a living wage across the state because when the pandemic hit, half of all Hispanics and Latinos in New Mexico had less than $1,000 in savings ready for this. And so we need to make sure that we have, the living wage for people that are getting by. We also need to make sure that our businesses are protected. Our small, as we've seen, the federal response has been so focused on large businesses, titans of industry, like we were in the first recession. We need to make sure we're focusing back on our Main Street businesses, our coffee shops, our food restaurants, our for us, our tourist shops, everything like that. We need to be giving them some relief as well.
Great. And first, I'm so sorry that your community has been hit so hard by the pandemic. And you've really been a leader in fighting for COVID-19 protections. What has gone well, and what are the steps that you think that you could take as an elected leader to help families in New Mexico that need more support to get through this time?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a fantastic governor. She was just elected back in 2018. Michelle Lujan Grisham has been a leader. And, in New Mexico, there's a saying that we're always at the top of the worst list and the bottom of the best list. And it's a really unfair mentality. I feel as though we're telling our children that we're handing you a raw deal and that's what it is. And so that was a real big commitment to me, that I would be committed to giving better for my daughter. And the governor has done the same. And when the pandemic hit, it also hit when oil prices plummeted. And here in New Mexico, oil and gas royalties make up more than a third of our entire state budget. So it really hurt our public education, which it primarily funds, and it took us all aback. What she did very well was she demanded mass testing as soon as possible. We were one of the first states to implement this. The first case of COVID came out, and 2 days later, she instituted social distancing protocols for the state. She took rapid action when we needed her to, and we give her. I mean, honestly, most New Mexicans approve of what she's done. But as a result, it's been really hard for working families, to get by. We have protections in place, right now at the national level against, evictions. But we're probably going to be seeing that increase, come the new year when those protections expire. We are also seeing, like I said, there isn't a lot of savings among our families. And so we need to do more to make sure that families are getting by and they have those social safety nets in place. Like I mentioned, the federal government has just really focused on larger businesses. And without the passage of the HEROES Act, so many New Mexicans have just been left waiting, and without that economic security that a family needs to thrive, that security that all children deserve to have, that they can grow up, feeling confident in what their future holds. And so, to me, that really is a call to making sure we're passing these worker first policies, and that we're doing what we can. So really getting New Mexico ready for the next wave of what comes from this virus, and staying the course. Again, we're surrounded by some states that have had some really big spikes. And so we just need to continue to fight through and protect our vulnerable populations.
Absolutely. And you're clearly very passionate about economic justice issues, I can tell. And you have such a strong record of working on these issues. How do you plan to bring that experience to the state house?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I went to college, I studied economics as part of like my public policy degree and everything like that. And it was so interesting because economics has always been framed as a conservative issue, that somehow conservatives know economics better and that no economic theory supports progressive ideology. But that's just not true. And we've tried trickle down for a long time, and it just hasn't worked for our working families. And so, what I really do believe is that we need to bring in these progressive policies backed by the science, backed by the math, do everything we need to show that these progressive policies will not only help our families, but will help the GDP of our state and of our nation. So I think that mentality, and also it's just we're in a different place in 2020. We're so lucky. We have all these women running from Emerge. We have all these amazing candidates that are upending the structure of what a politician looks like and what they do. And so for so long, it was a very stodgy, overly respectful, overly, you pay so much homage to these seats. And I feel with many of the women that are running now, that are winning now, that we're seeing here in New Mexico and across the country, that that mentality is changing. And I think what I get to do is I get to say, hey, here's a worker first platform that is backed by science, it's backed by math, and you know what? It turns out that most small businesses are already paying above a living wage because they care about their communities. So maybe we should stop giving, corporations these huge incentives to underpay and undermine our communities.
Yeah, and you absolutely know what you're talking about. And that comes from all of your experiences as an organizer and an advocate. What do you think about your past experiences will be helpful and an asset for your constituents?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned I was an organizer. I started organizing back in 2007 for Hillary and then 2008 for Obama here in New Mexico. And, you can't replace that experience, in your 20s of just living by the seat of your pants and finding people and asking them what they need to vote and getting them to where they need to be. And then again, serving people, how can we raise the wage? What can we do to help your organization? And so I really, being an organizer early in my career really shaped how I approach everything from here on out, how I talk to people, what we do. Our door is open, and New Mexico is very unique. We have an unpaid citizen legislature. So you have to keep a job during, while you're working, while you're serving your constituents. We have, a shortened legislature. It's not year round. And with all of that, what we've seen happen is that families and working class people have been left out. You can only afford to do it if you're retired or you own your own business. And so our commitment, my commitment to my constituents is that I'm going to be that voice for our working families. I live here in Santa Fe. The Roundhouse is 10 minutes, 15 minutes from our home. We're going to be fighting every day to make sure that, my daughter and her kids and her kids and, or, her friends do better than us. So, again, that experience of organizing, really talking to people, really connecting to people, and then just the experience of being a working mom in Santa Fe and saying, this isn't working. I had a kid and I committed to giving her something better. And so let's make a more sustainable future that she can feel secure in.
That's great. And I know that with the pandemic, canvassing and campaigning has really been completely different, and we have to reinvent how all of our campaigns have been led and how our candidates are doing things now. How has this really shifted how your race is going?
Yeah, it's been interesting. I had someone ask me the other day, well, it's 2-1 Democrats, you're why are you campaigning? Go on a house vacation. And, I think what's very different is that, social distancing is not conducive to people that like politics. We want to get together for the potlucks. We want to go door knocking. We want to activate people, get them excited. And it's hard to do that over a Zoom when, you can't see everyone around you. And so a big part for me has been trying to still find that center. What is the pulse of what people are talking about on the ground? How has that shifted? And really what I'm finding is that those bread and butter issues are what's driving people right now. We have high-minded issues. Equality is a huge concern here in New Mexico. Our state pledge talks about our diversity and our united cultures coming together, helping each other. That's part of our state pledge. And for New Mexicans, we embrace that. I think overall, I think there are some unique hurdles in New Mexico that are different than other places. But really, people, will ask me on the phone, when is this going to end? When can I open my shop up? When can I take my kids to school safely? And it's so hard because I'm a candidate right now. I'm not elected yet, but people are so eager for hope for what happens next. And so I think a really big part of this campaign continues to be, how do you provide that scope in the face of so much unknown in the future? And so that's really what is the center of this campaign now, is how do we find people where they're at and how we give them that hope that they desire.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. And you've certainly talked a lot about the things that are really passionate about you. You've been talking about housing policy a lot recently. How does that fit into your policy priorities?
Absolutely. So I think it all really comes together for this idea of how do we serve working class New Mexicans. And before the recession, New Mexico's housing was already on edge. Most evictions that happen in the United States are just because of a few $100s, and a few $100s is a broken car, like an engine problem, a child's visit to the doctor. I mean, a few $100s is nothing, but that's what it comes down to when people get evicted in the country. And so right now we have protections in place that are preventing evictions from happening in our nation. And in New Mexico, we have Mortgage Finance Authority, which is a body that essentially assists homeowners, home buyers, and renters, kind of make up that difference. But that was made for a time when we weren't anticipating mass evictions. And so we need to rapidly expand that within New Mexico, but then also provide relief to the counties and the cities and the towns and the villages and the pueblos across our state to prevent evictions from happening. That's where I'm seeing the biggest loss that's bound to happen. Before the pandemic, there weren't a lot of protections in place for renters, and I'm a renter. I've been my entire life, and many New Mexicans are. Our rental market here in Santa Fe is so tight. There's no movement in it. We have a lot of people because, again, we have an incredible state. It's amazingly beautiful. It's phenomenally, enlightening. And it's just, when you meet so many different people, it's incredible. So Santa Fe is incredible in that way. New Mexico's, the land of enchantment, as people say. And for us, like, we're seeing though that New Mexicans can't afford houses because other people are coming into our state and buying them. So we have to have protections in place that do that. So one of my big things is extending the moratorium on evictions, but then also offering relief at the county and city levels and expanding the mortgage finance authority for, the foreseeable future. We don't know how long this pandemic will continue. We need daily testing. We need a leader in office that's willing to acknowledge what's happening before we can move forward. And until we get that in the White House, New Mexico leaders are ready to take that on and make sure that we're protecting our communities.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that what really motivates me about Emerge is that there are all these amazing alums like you that are, holding the White House and the Trump administration accountable and making sure that women's voices are heard, because that's what we really need right now. And here at Emerge, we're building a network to encourage and support women running for office. Why did you choose to join Emerge, and what was your experience there, and how has this network helped you?
I love, 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 love Emerge. I cannot. I talk for hours about it to anybody who listen, and it's really given me the opportunity to stand by my beliefs, and I've worked in the background for a lot of wonderful leaders and for a lot of wonderful organizations, and where I was just a fly on the wall, and I was just putting together that press release, or just on the ground organizing, and really Emerge was the difference for making me come forward. And what I think is unique about Emerge, so here in New Mexico, our Emerge board is entirely made up of people identifying as women. Our executive director and our board chair are both women of color, and we have an 80+% success rate of our alums who run and win. That was what it was in the primary in 2018. I believe it was in around 80% then too. So we have a very strong Emerge community here. Our classes are expanding. There are these incredible women telling these amazing stories. It's just been so wonderful to be a part of that. But what I tell people is that when I first told folks I was going to sign up for Emerge, I had a lot of pushback from men, unsurprisingly, because well, it was, some of it was kind-hearted, some of it was also, what are you doing? Because they said, well, you've already worked in politics. What do you need Emerge for? And what I realized doing Emerge was so much of our political body is made for landowning men. That is who we are pushing. That is the narrative we have committed to for the past 200 years. And going into an environment where we were talking about politics from a nuanced and a different way was very eye-opening for me. And I went in saying, well, maybe I'll run for, a local school board race, and leaving saying, yeah, I can run for state rep. I can do that. And it was so funny, afterwards, the Christmas, our Emerge goes through September. Yeah, through September. And that Christmas, somebody gave me a Brene Brown, the public speaker, one of her books. And I remember looking like, I don't need this. I just did Emerge. I can do anything. It was very much that way. So I love the community that I have, the women that I can just text on the fly and say, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Or are you okay? Or what's going on? Or, that's been something that's so fulfilling. I love the way we're approaching politics. Again, you can show me what's happened in the past. We can talk about the past all we want, but this is a new frontier. We need innovative solutions. We need leaders that are ready for these new challenges. And I believe Emerge is fundamental in that conversation. I'm really excited for our organization.
That's amazing to hear about your experience with our Emerge Sisterhood. And this year in 2020, there are more women than ever running up and down the ballot. It's record breaking and so exciting. And what advice would you give to women who are running, women who are thinking about running, women of color who, have never really considered it before?
Yeah, I mean, you were in the background for a long time. You were doing all the work. You know everything. And maybe you look at your tagline and say, mom running for office, that's not enough. And it is. We need those voices in places of power. We need to have a seat at the table. So don't worry about what your tagline will be. Focus on everything you learned on Emerge, and make sure that you are putting together those pieces of that puzzle and building out the best campaign. Because like I said, nobody thought we were going to do this. I came into the underdog, and at some point, towards in our primaries at the beginning of June, and so some point in like late May, one of my friends said, well, now you're the person to beat. You're the target now. And I was like, oh my gosh, when did that happen? So that transformation, we did not anticipate that happening. But and even if somebody else is in there, if you want to get into the race, just do it. I had friends that distanced themselves for a minute because I was running against one of their other friends. But when all was said and done, we all came together again because we have the same value. So run enthusiastically and unapologetically. Do it wildly.
Yeah, we need more women out there, more women like you. So thank you so much for being part of Emerge and this episode of Races to Watch, which will be available on Emerge's YouTube channel. Do you have any closing remarks, anything that you want us to know?
I'm really excited. I hope you all keep an eye on New Mexico and come and visit. I wouldn't live anywhere else.
I will plan on it. Well, again, thank you, and subscribe for our updates from our team, and join us next week for an interview with Bryn Kennedy, who is running for Congress in my state of California. And Linda, thank you so much. We loved having you.
Thanks, Diane. Have a great afternoon.
You too.
Thanks.